Hi guys, it's Kelly and I am back doing another video. This is going to be a Day for Daisies image and it's called the Mucha Style Poppy, and then I'm also using a stencil from Hero Arts that is called the Crisscross Stencil. I wanted the flower to look like it was maybe backed by like a little garden trellis. So this time around, I decided I was going to mask my image using some liquid Frisket by Grumbacher, and I have a paintbrush that's dedicated to this because no matter how well you clean it, that thing gets funky. And so I'm just going to lay that down on top of my flower. And once it's all dry, I can go ahead and put in my background around it, and it will resist all of the distressing I'm going to put on it. I decided to mask my image this way because I had printed the image and then I could not remember what size I printed it out at. Like, I went back through and I printed it like 3 different times and just wasting tons of paper. And I was like, there's better ways to do this. Forget it. We're moving on. So I laid down a light layer of brushed corduroy, and now I'm going to put that crisscross stencil on the background. I flipped it around because I prefer to add my ink from the right. That's just what's more comfortable for me. So I'm going to put on, this is the new color Ground Espresso from Tim Holtz. I think it was two months ago, the color of the month. So once that's done, I'll go ahead and lift up my stencil. I'm being pretty careful with it because I put repositional adhesive on the back of my stencil, and this one I had just done. So it's pretty sticky the first time you use it. But then that's the image, and then we're going to go in with, I just have like a kneading eraser to start pulling up the masking, and once I get it started, then I can just roll it off with my finger. Sometimes because it is a liquid and you're putting it on printer ink, this is just me figuring out what color I'm going to fill in the areas that I missed. And I ended up going with Y26. I'm sorry I didn't show you that, but that seemed to be the closest color I had to the background. And it's hard to get perfect when you're putting that liquid Frisket on, especially with such a intricate image as this is. And I would rather have masking in my background than brown in my image. So if I'm going to go over, I'm totally fine with it. You just fill it in with a Copic that matches, and nobody will ever even know the difference. So here I picked out some YGs, and I went with more more like grayed out colors, and I ended up not digging it. Like, I did it. It's so hard for me to use fall colors. Like, I don't know if anybody else has this problem, but when it comes to fall colors, I am like at a loss. I don't know what happens. You take out my bright colors and I don't have clue on what the heck I'm doing. So I did the shading regular. I always start with my lightest color and then go to my mid-tone, then to my dark, and then from my darkest to my mid-tone to my light. And I did color them all that way. Later on, you'll see I go back in with a YG03 just because I felt like the whole thing was so dark, just so dark. And I know fall colors are supposed to be less saturated. I can't help myself, guys. I cannot help myself. So my Copic coloring is speeded up to about 3 times its regular time, just so this video doesn't run for 100 years. And again, I just go in with my lightest color where I add that first where I want my shading to be. Then I put the medium on top of that, and then the dark. Here I was just more or less paying attention to the leaves that laid on top of each other and where that shading should be, not so much the shading within the leaf, because they're not very large. So yeah, just did one side, flipping it over, doing the other. I love flower images, period, and this is just one of many from the new club kit from A Day for Daisies, and they're going to be available in the shop. So just really pretty fun flowers. I don't know what it is about poppies. I love to color them, which is weird because I don't actually like red, and you should have seen me struggling to find red cardstock to go in the background. I don't own it. Yee, I know, it's terrible. I got to get on that. I love the basil cardstock. I think it's like the candy shop ones. Those are beautiful. So I really need to get ordering on that. So I'm sorry, I'm off the screen. I'll scoot it up in a minute, but the flower just looked like it was kind of like hanging there. So I wanted to give it like a little grassy area, a little mound that it was sitting on. So I'm just using the same greens to create that and letting it fade off the right hand side just like the stenciling does. And I don't know if you can see it on here or not, but when I was doing the stenciling, somehow I got like this dot of brown in the area that it's supposed to be faded off. I'm covering that up with a sequin later. Like, I knew it was there. I'm like, whatever, I'll figure out how to get rid of that. I'm not doing this again. So just going in with some reds. This is my favorite combination for reds, and it is R32, R35, R29, and R59. And I just feel like that's a pretty red combination. It's fairly bright, and it makes me happy. So here with the shading on the petals, because that flower is opening out, and especially the one that's right in front there, that one, the shading is going to be on the bottom, and the top portion will be the lightest because of the way that Tammy drew it and how it opens up. So I'm just going through and starting with my lightest, then my mid-tone. Then I usually use 4 colors to blend. If this is your first video of mine that you're watching, 4 is usually what makes me happy. And then the darkest color, I'll go in and just add little bits to, you know, the darkest areas, those petals in the background that are opening up. There's more towards the center is going to be darker than, you know, pretty much anything else. And then we'll just reverse. Doesn't that make you think of that song? What is that? Where like they played at every wedding, and you have to do the little line dancing, and then they go reverse, 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 reverse. It's fun to dance to. I can't sing it or anything, but that's what I think of every time I say that. So yeah, just going back through, and then after, when I get to my lightest color, I just felt like it really washed out the R35. It just, I don't know what happened there, but it just really washed it out, and it just looked like super dark in the center and super light on the edges. So I don't normally go in a third time, but this time I did. I went back around with the R35 and then the R29 to get it to blend a little better. Yeah, just do whatever you need to do to be happy with your image. If you have to go back in, or maybe you stop at layer 1, whatever works for you. So inside of poppies is normally black, so I'm using some cool grays to go ahead and put those in there, and just real quick washes of it, and then I'll fill in the center with a Y38, just a little pop of orange. And here, this is where I went back in with the YG03 because I just didn't feel like those leaves were bright enough. I was really struggling. Struggle is real, yo. And then I wanted to add a shadow because like I said, I wanted that background to look like it was a trellis. And there you can see how I held my hand. My light source is in the top right on my desk, and that's how I was drawing my shadow on my image. So you can see how the shadow falls down into the left. So that is how I shaded it, so that it would be down and to the left. I did one layer with W7, and then I will work out from W7 to W5 to W3 to W1. I didn't leave the whole thing in because it is literally the same thing over and over again, and I figured that would be like watching paint dry. So I just showed you where I'm laying in the darkest shadows, and then everything else will go right on top of that. I'm not cheating you out of anything. It will go right on top of it. And here we are in the last one, the W1, and you can see how it blended out, and it gives the appearance of standing up. I always outline all of my images, and it's especially important when you're using like a digital image because a lot of times that ink can get lost in everything else you've put on the paper. So again, I didn't show you the whole thing. It's boring, I promise. Plus my head's in the way half the time. I thought that there was a lot of white space, and I wanted to give it a more interesting edge. So I'm using the W+9 landscape borders to just give it a little more interest. And here I'm just laying out my sentiment so that I can make sure that I leave myself enough room for it to fit. Laid it down. I'm happy with it. We're going to tack this bad boy down and run it through the Cuttlebug. So then that piece comes off, and it adds a little bit of interest to an otherwise, fairly open panel. I'm using my favorite ink, W+9 Pure Color Black Dye ink for my sentiment. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that, and then I originally had thought about making it say sending hugs, and I decided to go with You Brighten My Day. I'm using some red craft foam to put behind it so that it will pop up over my card base, which I've already adhered some red cardstock to, which was that one was Coordinations. It's like old stuff I have in there. I told you I was getting desperate. So that one is Cherry Tomato by Coordinations. And then I added some gold and clear sequins. The gold's just generic. The clear's from Pretty Pink Posh. And of course some Winkostella, because everything should be shiny and beautiful. And yeah, so that's pretty much the card. It has I like that I popped it up. I think it gives it a little more dimension. And while I'm going to be honest, it's not my favorite card, I don't think it's terribly hideous either. So that's it. I'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Bye.